All right, and welcome back to Realize the Self, and I am your host, Mark. And in today's episode, I wanted to go over one very important thing in regards to brain training and neurofeedback training. There's some people out there that are having people or selling the idea that one can acquire cities or magical powers doing delta brainwave training, and that is categorically false and untrue. And basically, one needs to really investigate these claims for oneself before um, taking that as factual evidence, because there's no information that shows that that's true. And I'm going to go over some inherent dangers of doing delta neurofeedback training, especially as it can damage the brain. And it appears that some people that may have done it numerous and numerous times may have actually damaged their brain. Once you hurt the brain, you can't undamage the brain, and it could cause all sorts of problems when one is messing with delta brainwaves in a waking state. Delta brainwaves are normally prominent in deep dreamless sleep, and that's when it's supposed to be. There's not supposed to be any mental activity as in deep dreamless sleep. There's mental activity. Unfortunately, people that are doing the delta brain neurofeedback do it with alpha brainwaves in addition to delta brainwaves, and alpha causes mental activity. And after studying brainwaves and neurofeedback for the past couple years, I am actually horrified at the use of delta brain neurofeedback training and its potential dangers and harm that they're inflicting on themselves as well as other people. And so here's an article with information that I compiled. And so delta done with alpha in an attempt to deliberately induce a hybrid brainwave state in which high delta activity, normally associated with deep non-REM sleep, is present, while alpha, as well as some beta activity associated with waking awareness, attention, and ego function, remain online. This configuration asks the nervous system to be simultaneously in deep sleep physiology and waking executive control, a state that is not a natural baseline for the brain. This is completely unnatural. In advanced contemplatives, similar states may emerge gradually and stabilize over many years through endogenous neuroplastic adaptation. However, when forced through practices such as aggressive neurofeedback, this can lead to thalamocortical dysregulation, where sensory gating typical of sleep conflicts with cortical activation required for waking awareness. This mismatch disrupts the default mode network, the neural system underlying narrative self, time continuity, and ego coherence, leading to symptoms such as chronic dissociation, depersonalization, derealization, brain fog, visual snow, and fragmented identity. Artificial waking delta training can also disturb sleep architecture, suppressing restorative slow wave sleep and flattening REM cycles, contributing to insomnia, chronic fatigue, and the subjective sense of being never fully awake or asleep. And then, as we go further, from a psychological and psychiatric perspective, the risks become more severe and clinically significant. Sustaining egoic monitoring, such as alpha and beta on top of delta dominance, is strongly associated with dissociative disorders, including depersonalization, derealization disorder, identity diffusion, and emotional numbing. And you can see this with people that have done a lot of this delta training. They lack empathy, compassion, and loving kindness. And these are hallmarks for self-realization. What they're doing is they're trying to uh, get these cities or powers by doing all these delta brainwaves, and all they're doing is harming themselves and harming others potentially. And the risks are very real. What you do to your brain, it's hard to undo what you do, and I don't know how to undo the damage done from delta brain neurofeedback if the harm does happen. And so when vulnerable nervous systems, especially those with bipolar predisposition, trauma history, psychedelic exposure, or chronic sleep disruption, this hybridization can precipitate hypomania, psychosis, grandiose or messianic delusions, and thought deorganization. And this is exactly what you see with the individuals who have done these high-level delta trainings, who have just hammered the brain with delta. They have these grandiose ideations, who they think they're messianic complexes because their ego has been amplified rather than suppressed. When you do meditation, exercises of mindfulness and awareness, you have you don't have, your ego goes away and becomes less and less. But when you do artificial brainwave training, and psychedelics can do this as well, it actually amplifies the ego and causes an egoic backlash in many cases. Chronically elevated delta during waking also suppresses dopaminergic and limbic activity, leading to anhedonia, motivation collapse, and effective blunting. Most critically, ego plus waking delta is inherently unstable. Delta activity dissolves perceptual and self-boundaries, while ego function requires stable boundaries for agency and coherence. This conflict produces oscillation between the loss of agency and compulsive control, manifesting as panic and silence, existential terror, and fear of disappearance. In clinical spirituality and psychiatry, this pattern is documented as unintegrated ego dissolution or spiritual emergency, a known pathway to spiritual trauma and emergency psychiatric missions during intensive contemplative practice. And these are just some of the dangers that I have found and put together and compiled on delta neurofeedback training coupled with alpha. And, honestly, I wouldn't even touch delta training with all the information we have now, delta neurofeedback training, because it is an unnatural state. I would not force it. I would let that state come about naturally through these mindfulness and awareness practices, if that state does want to manifest itself, because there's some very interesting things that do occur when people do have waking delta, and I talk about this in the book quite a bit. They can manifest in a way called dark delta, where they're able to manipulate and have people do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And unfortunately, I had the displeasure of working with people and interacting with people that did have dark delta, and they tried to manipulate me and gaslight me into doing and thinking things that were not true and incorrect. And I could tell you from a firsthand experience how to deal with that. There's a few ways. Number one is you want to reduce eye contact with these people that are highly suggestible and that may be a bit of a hypnotic gaze when you look at them. So you want to reduce eye contact, and you want to increase the distance that you have between them, because it becomes less effective, their influence upon you, as you move and increase the distance. So increase distance, decrease eye gaze, and always remember who you are as awareness, as the self, because you may feel an increased adrenaline, increased blood flow, as these individuals try to subject you to their will or to manipulate in a way that you would not otherwise have done. And you may feel a dark cloud upon you. I know there was a whole entire building that felt like a dark cloud from one or two individuals that exuded immense dark delta and high levels of delta, and all the people there working there were experiencing this, and you could just feel the thickness in the air. But as we increase our levels of kindness, compassion, empathy, and our connection with our divine self, with the divine spark within, we can overcome that, because that light overcomes the darkness, and it is infinity. You are infinity. You are everything. You must remember who you are, and that's the only way to counteract this. And we just don't know how often this is going on. If in the world, like how many politicians, how many high-level government officials have this type of brainwave, what's going on with people that are very influential and seductive with their speaking. So you just want to, the best way to overcome this and to not be influenced is to realize the self and realize the love within that you truly are. And that's your friendly reminder to always pursue self-realization and ultimately you'll realize it was never anything to pursue because you were always that. And thank you for being here.